Okay, thanks, Craig. All right, so let's make sure that I can get control here and move through the slides. Is it the next slide? Let's see. Okay, so some Microsoft updates that people need to be aware of is that the Windows 10 Creators Update is now rolling out. So I suppose another service pack, if you want to think of it in old terms, it's currently available to the early adopters now and will be rolling out to all customers over time. And typically it'll be a staged rollout. So Microsoft will obviously look at the feedback and the telemetry and work out who is getting it. But a good idea perhaps for resellers to go in and have a look at it, download it, play with it. There are some updates around the integration with Azure AD, some nice features, nothing major, but certainly an opportunity to go back and speak to customers and let them know about the updates that are coming out with the newer version of Windows 10. So be aware that Microsoft is running a number of conferences internationally. So we have the largest one for the IT community will be Microsoft Ignite in Orlando in September. It may seem like that's a bit of a stretch. Well, the good thing about most of these conferences today is the fact that they are all recorded and put up on the web. So the last Ignite in 2016, you'll find all the sessions available for you to watch on YouTube, plus all the PowerPoints. Highly recommend that you go back through, target some of the technologies you're interested in and work through those presentations. You'll also find presentations from the recent Microsoft Australia Ignite in February. Again, worthwhile working through those as well to get yourself up to speed. Now, there is also a lot of virtual events. There's a couple of virtual events around SharePoint in May, some other device announcements. So again, stay tuned for what's coming new from Microsoft, but certainly recommend that you have a look at the previous Ignite and then get ready for the streaming events and also the recorded events coming in September. Now, a bit of an interesting one here. One of the surveys now has indicated that the Surface device tops the iPad when it comes to popularity. I suppose the indication, the takeaway here is that the Microsoft hardware product obviously is kicking some goals out there. My experience is that it's very, very common and very, very popular with customers. Something to look at. Used the Surface devices myself. One of the big advantages I found is the Windows Hello. So basically I just need to look at my PC and it will automatically log me into the area. So lots and lots of benefits of looking at adding Surface and focusing on Surface as the hardware, bringing it all under the one Microsoft umbrella. Again, things tend to work much better when you have the same hardware and the same software supplier, much like Apple has been doing for years. So again, if you do have people out there who are into the iPad, would not hesitate to show them the advantages around what Surface can provide for them. Okay, so let's talk about some Office 365 specific updates. Now, probably in the time that we have run this, the biggest news is the Microsoft Teams. So Microsoft Teams effectively is a new way to look at productivity. It's a combination or a grouping of things like SharePoint, email addresses, Planner. It rolls this all up under a single banner known as a Microsoft Team. You can be a member of various teams. Each team gets an area to store files. It has a chat, and it also has a very quick way to launch conversations using Skype for Business. Now, a couple of major differences here is firstly that this is all delivered via a dedicated app. So there's a dedicated app for the PC, Mac, and all your devices. So you can basically users can basically work in their productivity environment without having to swap between different browser tabs or navigate through a SharePoint team site. All of it is presented to them quickly and easily. One of the other big benefits, obviously, is the chat interface, much like typical channels in other products. So you can have conversations. You can make sure that all your information, all your conversations is in public. Once information is in public, then the advantage is that it's all searchable. So that means that collaboration, information sharing is much, much easier. Now, it's important, I think, for IT pros to have some basis and understanding of what Teams are. It's going to be a very, very big aspect of Microsoft going forward. Need to have a good concept of how it all fits together, where the parts are, and how it can be provisioned. So it's something that users will provision themselves because they have the ability to do that. Now, the team product is on a very rapid development cycle. One of the things that it currently doesn't provide for is access for external users. So at the moment, Teams is basically restricted to users within your Office 365 tenant. However, Microsoft have recently committed to a June-July timeframe when you'll be able to invite external users into a team. So this is really, really something that customers have been asking for, the ability to share information inside the advantages or the abilities within Teams with external people. So keep an eye out for that. And again, if you haven't looked at Teams, if you haven't started playing with it, really strongly recommend that you start looking at this product, getting familiar with it, and also presenting it to customers, because my experience is that it is resonating with them very, very much. All right, so something else that has been around probably for a little while. Let's see if we can get to band. So what you may not have seen as yet is something from Microsoft called Secure Score. Now, there's a video down there that you can have a look at. So basically what you can do with Secure Score is you can run it against an Office 365 tenant. It will give you a rating of how secure your tenant has been configured. And importantly, it allows you to have a number of actions that you can take to improve that score. So you can take the suggestions that are there, so implementing things like multi-factor authentication, better passwords, retention policies will increase the score. Now, you can adjust the settings here and make it as secure as you want. I think importantly, what it gives IT resellers the opportunity to do is to basically go and analyze existing customers' environments and then have a to-do list of items that can be implemented to make that environment more secure. So again, if you haven't looked at Secure Score, have a look at the video. That'll give you a nice overview. Then go and have a play with it on your own tenant, and then look at enrolling that as an opportunity to go and speak to customers and inform them and show them how they can make their Office 365 environment and the information inside it more secure. All right, so okay, we now have new file viewers available in SharePoint and OneDrive for Business. Now, probably the one that most people have been hanging on is the Visio viewer. So that means that when you click on a Visio file, it will display in a browser. There is no need for having Visio on the desktop, so it enables it to be seen by anybody. Now, there are a number of other graphics files that have been included, some X-ray style attachments, so all different sorts. And if you go to that link there, you'll be able to see the complete list of extensions that are enabled when you click on them in a browser from SharePoint or OneDrive for Business. So the idea is you can click on the file, it will open in the browser, it will render, you can view the file, and again, potentially edit that file as well. So we should all be familiar with that with Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. But there also are a number of additional ones like PDFs, zips, and text files, and now we have the ability to do the same with Visio files. Now, one of the other add-ons or things that a lot of people have been requesting is Excel co-authoring. Now, there has been the ability to co-author Excel documents, but typically that was done using the web version. So now we have this ability to do co-authoring back onto our desktop. So if you've got the latest version of Excel and you open a file from your SharePoint team site or from your OneDrive, you can then allow somebody else to come in and work on that document, and that document then will support multiple editors at the same time. So there are some limitations. Obviously, you can't both be editing the same cell, but it means that it will give the ability for multiple people to work on an Excel file, whether on their desktop or from the web. So another feature that has recently been added to the Office 365 suite that has been a major request from users. Now, another technology here that I suppose that has caused a lot of grief or caused a lot of consternation for customers and resellers is that some of the characters in files have been unsupported when it comes to OneDrive and SharePoint. So this has meant that when you've tried to upload a file, for example, that might have had ampersand or hash or percentage in it, then it would fail to update. Now, what Microsoft have done have been working in the background over time to eliminate these limitations. So now what they've recently announced, which are two of the last major issues when it comes to illegal characters, is the hash and the percentage support. So if you have documents that natively have a hash or a percentage in their name, they can now be uploaded into SharePoint Online and OneDrive for Business. So that article there will show you how to immediately implement it if you need to do it using PowerShell, but the features will be rolled out over time in a very short period of time to all tenants. But if you need that ability immediately, you can go in and run a PowerShell command that will allow you to do that throughout your tenant. Okay, so another very important update, I believe, is some updates to the K1 SKU. Now, the K1 SKU is what's known as a kiosk license. Now, the difference with a kiosk license is that it is aimed at users who only use a web browser. So typically doesn't allow users to connect via Outlook on the desktop. They do everything via a web, great for a mobile user on a tablet or on a mobile device. Now, a lot of the cases were that K1 had restrictions around it, what it could be viewed, what it could have access to. And again, Microsoft now has increased that ability. So for example, the K1 now can get to things like Teams and also edit a larger range of documents. So again, if you've got K1 licenses or you're thinking about implementing K1 licenses, which are a great option, obviously, to keep the cost down for users who only need relatively simple access to the information, certainly have a look at the K1 and have a look at the link that we've got there that will give you the additional options and enhancements that Microsoft has just added to the K1 SKU. All right, so with that, again, there's lots and lots of Office 365 news, lots and lots of stuff coming out. So again, keep tuned around that. We should see more announcements coming shortly, but they're probably the most relevant ones. Now, let's turn our attention here to Azure. So some news when it comes to Azure is firstly that the synchronization technologies, the older synchronization technologies being Azure AD Sync and DirSync, have reached end of support. So if you are still synchronizing your on-premises Active Directory to Azure AD for Office 365 or for Azure, you'll need to look at updating that synchronization to using the Azure AD Connect tool. So the latest Azure AD software, again, free download, no cost for that, that sits in your local environment and basically copies users, objects, and their passwords and their password hash up to Azure AD. Make sure that you are running the Azure AD Connect version and you've upgraded from Azure AD Sync or DirSync. You'll get a lot more features, a lot more functionality, a lot more stability once you have the AD Connect. And remember that the older versions soon will not be supported by Microsoft. So again, make sure that you do update your environment. Okay, so we're also seeing Microsoft release in preview a new Azure AD module. So at the moment, the current version allows you, for example, to connect to your Office 365 environment, your users, your passwords, to go in and use PowerShell to manage and maintain and script a lot of the day-to-day stuff. There is, as you see here, a new AD module becoming available, version 2. This has some slight differences. It's compatible, obviously, with PowerShell version 5. That means that, as you can see, it's typically will be a download from within the PowerShell environment rather than having to pre-install it as you need to do today. So the Azure AD module version 2 is going to give you more functionality, more power, more access to the things in Office 365 as well as Azure when it comes to identity. So if you're big into the PowerShell side of managing Office 365 and Azure, make sure that you go and have a look at the new Azure AD preview. Again, the information there for you to pop in and have a look. Now, the older current version 1 module will work fine, will continue to work fine, and will be supported. But as with all things, the recommendation is that now is the time to start having a look at this new version. Make sure that you're up to date and you're across all the enhancements that are being added by these new versions. This module again brings it into line with the current version of PowerShell, makes it much easier to deploy. You can do everything basically in the PowerShell environment rather than having to pre-install software beforehand. Now, some other news here that you can you can back up your VMs in Azure already. So you can back that up a number of different ways. And Microsoft has just recently announced that there is the ability now to do pre-checks of those backups. So this is going to give you the ability to make sure that the image is good, that there's going to be no issues with it, and it will back up in a timely manner. So again, there is a link there for you to go and have a look at, and again, get into, if you're using Azure machines or you're thinking about using Azure VMs, the backups are quite powerful and quite easy to implement in what they can do. Now you can back up obviously directly from the portal, so the portal.azure.com, but you can also again do that via something like PowerShell. So again, we're going to have all these abilities and all this functionality built into the product, that the most likely way to get to it is via scripting. Now, the last item I've got here is the announcement from Citrix and Microsoft that their XenApp Essential is now available in the Azure Marketplace. So this is the replacement to the Remote app. So Remote app that was available only in the ASM, so in the Service Manager portal within Azure. So this basically allows you to run an RDS, remote desktop server, terminal server as a service. So it basically allows you to create virtual desktops and for users to go in and access those. Now, again, it's an app. You just go into the marketplace. There is the cost there, but depending on what version, and you're looking at probably $6 to $12 a month per user to enable this. And again, there are different options available, and again, there are some licensing requirements. But at the end of the day, this is the replacement for the Remote app service that is now available in the Resource Manager module. So this will give you that flexibility, will allow you to run a RDS on-demand environment directly out of Azure, rather than having to, for example, now spin up an Azure VM and do it as you would traditionally do on premises. Now, the very last thing I'll call you to before I hand back over to Craig is that one of the things Microsoft announced today is that their B2B connectivity has now gone GA. So this basically allows you to place third-party users without any cost into the management area of your Azure AD. So typically you would have a third party using a Gmail, Hotmail, whatever email address. You can now set them up as a user inside your Azure AD, and that allows you to easily share resources from Office 365 and Azure without all the management headache and overhead. So again, something we didn't manage to get into the slides today, but again, look out for that new collaboration methodology to make life much easier. Now, one of the big things that are coming down the track with that is basically single sign-on for external users. So once they've got a login and a password, if they've got a Gmail address, if they're logged into Gmail inside a browser and they've been configured inside Azure with this B2B environment, then they will have a seamless login to all the Access environment, SharePoint team sites, and potentially things like Microsoft Teams. So really, really keen to see Microsoft bringing in this ability to allow third-party users to quickly come in, easily come in and get access to the Microsoft resources, especially around Teams. So in summary, there is an overview of some of the most important updates around Office 365 and Azure. The big one, I think, that I'd really call your attention to is the focus on Microsoft Teams. If you haven't had a look at that, if you haven't done some exploring or talked to your customers about that, my strongest recommendation is now is the time to start getting involved with that and make sure that you're up to speed, because it is something I think a lot of clients will be jumping on board and something that Microsoft will be promoting very heavily. But with that, Craig, I think it's back over to you.